we're really excited because a lot of the time when we think about food systems, we aren't considering who's putting together these events, who's putting together the aggregation of food, what leadership looks like. We have researchers here, we have folks who are doing leadership positions within food advocacy and food justice work in our local community. And we want to start off with Alleluia. She's going to give an excellent presentation about the work that she's done, and we're all going to clap.
So the study is called Predominantly White Institutions and Food Access to Marginalized Communities, Surveys, Incentives, and Community Engagement. So this is the research team that we worked on this project together with. As you all know, Lauren, who's the head of the PCM, brains behind the project, and then Angela Babb, who was a postdoc at the time, and she came in through the Strong workshop, and so she's kind of really helped facilitating with like the surveys, the design of the project, overseeing that, and then Janelle, me, and Sid, we were the kind of the research assistants, and Janelle, I think she graduated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she presented last year, and then Sid does a lot of food justice work. And then, as I mentioned, Mia Anthony, who was the MA student, this was her original thesis, and so her interest was really trying to understand food insecurity among BIPOC students, faculty, and staff. And we took on this project to continue that. So just a little bit of background about the study. Universities often are overlooked because the population not typically associated with food insecurity, which are college students or colleges in general, folks in universities. I think the assumption is that people in universities have the money, and so they don't often associate them with food insecurity. And so over the past 15 years, there's been a growing concern around food insecurity. And according to the USDA, food insecurity is defined as limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe foods, or limited or uncertain ability to acquire acceptable foods in socially acceptable ways. And so the US in general, that's a definition on the national level. And the US has about 12% households, according to the USDA, of people who fall under this umbrella of food insecure. And then in 2021, the National Education Statistics, a federal agency responsible for gathering and analyzing data on education in the US, published the first nationally representative data on food insecurity, particularly within undergraduate or within university, but they only focused on graduate and undergrad students. And the data was focused on trying to understand how students finance their education. And they found that 35% of students experience low to very low food insecurity. And just as a specific number, it was around 4 million students nationwide. Yes, and so among those students, Black students reported one of the highest levels, so 34% for undergrad and then 24% for graduate students, and then followed by Latino and Asian students. And so we wanted to include faculty and staff as well because they also experience food insecurity. And so there was one report that we found, the American Federation of Teachers, which reported that 27% faculty members experience problems of anxiety about accessing inadequate food. And when broken down by race, it also disproportionately affected staff and faculty of color. And so, I think our approach in thinking about this big data was thinking about, from IU's perspective, how is this impacting students, faculty, and staff within this community? And so this assessment was really just trying to focus specifically here in Bloomington. So the survey, so we did two different types of ways to collect data. We started off with a survey, and then we did interviews as well. So IU, as you all know, is a PWI, and they actually also did a wellness survey in 2019. The university conducted it, and they found that 39% undergraduate students reported experiencing food insecurity, particularly indicating a lack of sufficient food and financial means to support an adequate diet. And this percent is actually surpassing the national average. And then in 2023, we found through the, and it's an office at IU called the Chief Health Officer, and they showed us, they kind of gave us the data that they collected. I think their data was like looking overall people's like health habits or something like that. And so we were able to look through their data to look specifically on the questions around food insecurity. And we kind of got the breakdown of the students. And so in their survey, we also found that, you know, a lot of students of color reported having very low to low food insecure. So with all this information, we again decided to conduct our own survey, including interviews. So the survey was fielded in Qualtrics, and this was a year-long survey, which started off, we started off with a pilot just to test everything out, and then we launched it officially in April 2023. And the survey went for a year. And the way that we recruited folks is made a lovely flyer, which I should have included here, but a lovely flyer that we posted around campus. And so students just kind of scanned their phone and access the survey through that. And then we also tried to attend different community events to try and hand out the survey. And then through that survey, as the students took the survey, students, faculty, and staff, then, you know, if they were interested in a follow-up interview, that is how, you know, we recruited folks there. And so that is the collection process. So here's some of the results. As you can see, the graduate students and undergrad is on the higher, that's where we got most people in the survey. And then women, which makes sense, you know, kind of the majority of the population. And then, so the majority of the population around race was Asian, and then followed by Black, and then multiracial. And so the numbers, you could see it's slightly different. So 137, 132, I think that's because people could choose like multiple. And so that's how come the numbers are a little bit different for each. But we also, of course, this is a survey for, you know, for BIPOC faculty, student, staff, so we did not include white participants. And then, so the majority of the respondents, they lived off campus, which I think makes sense given, you know, faculty, staff, and everything. And then also graduate students took up a big part of that, so a lot of graduate students don't live on campus. And then the transportation, a lot of people used public or personal vehicle, but I think also still a lot of people were walking. So this is still a pretty big number considering everything. And then a few people that carpool. And so the trying to understand how people access transportation was important because we, you know, figured how are you accessing your food? If you're not going on campus, how else are you getting it? I know as a first-year graduate student, I struggled a lot with like transportation. I didn't have a car my first 2 years. And so I remember one professor, I asked her about it, or she was telling me, she was like, when I was in grad school, like I took a suitcase and like did the grocery shopping with my suitcase, because just trying to find a way to. Yeah, Yeah, because it's a lot of groceries that you're buying.
What are you saying to me?
Yeah, I did not do that, but luckily I carpooled. I was one of the people that carpooled. But it just sounded like a struggle, and it was a struggle, especially because I'm like, I need to buy big groceries. How do I do that if I don't have a car or transportation? So that was why this question is important. So a few questions that we asked is asking people to indicate if they were worried about food would run out before they got enough money to buy more. The food that I bought didn't last, or I didn't have enough money to get more. I couldn't afford a balanced diet, fresh produce, and then of course the transportation, and then the type of foods, wanting to know what type of foods, if people are satisfied with the types of foods that they actually eat, and then if they can afford it. So just as a visual, this is better. So a lot of people, if you could see, for the most of the survey, people said often or sometimes true, and so that kind of fell across with, couldn't afford to buy food on campus, the types of foods that they wanted to eat, and things like that. And I think it's interesting that they couldn't afford to buy food on campus, because why is campus food expensive?
It's so expensive.
And then, of course, the balanced meal is important. I think that's true for a lot of us, myself included. And then also, worried that food would run out. So, yeah, these are definitely concerning results. And then they were also asked if they qualified, if they knew that they qualified for SNAP, WIC, or any of the state food assistance programs. And so while most people said no, a lot of people also said they didn't know. And so that was also kind of a point of concern. Because I think even for me as an undergrad, I didn't know. Like, I had someone bring it up to me that, you can, apply for this food assistance. But as a graduate student, I kind of knew it. But then even as a graduate student, I don't qualify. So I think a lot of people, probably it's unfortunate that they don't qualify. The state wants you to be like broke, like zero money to get assistant. No, literally, it's crazy. And then in the last 12 months, they also indicated, as I mentioned, a lot of folks said that they did not have enough, always didn't have the type of foods that they wanted. And then food resource on campus. A lot of people don't use the food resource on campus, which I think from what people said, it's expensive. But then next is Crimson Cupboard, which I don't know too much about. I know that it's a pantry, but I haven't been there myself. But that's one of the other majority way that people access food. And so that was the survey. So for the interviews, we just kind of wanted to get a deeper understanding of the survey questions. And students were really just asked, more about, the transportation, issues around, how are you accessing your foods, things like that. And so the themes that came up were, for a lot of people, cooking at home was the number one thing. So people either said that they try to cook at home or that they didn't have enough time to cook at home. So that was, kind of an opposite thing, but it did come up a lot. And then the second was access to cultural foods. So people not having access to certain ingredients. I think a lot of people were talking about specific, I think it was the global market. Mm-hmm. Some people mentioned the global market is where they go, or I think there's like a Mexican market as well.
La Bonita.
Yeah, and so that was one of the two places that was mentioned as far as that, but most people, they, kind of expressed concern of not having access to food and certain ingredients. And then need for community fell next. So, I think for that one, it's a range of different things. People just didn't know, one, didn't have access to people that look like them, given that we're in a PWI. but then also, wanting to get more of that connection. I think speaking for myself as a grad student, like we have our grad cohort community, but I think generally we're also pretty isolated. But I think also just Bloomington itself, like it's a college town, but I think, for a lot of people of color, it's like coming here, you really have to make an effort to build that community. So that came up. And then healthy food. For that, I think campus food, people said, was either not healthy or because of lack of time, of not having time to cook, then they were just like eating unhealthy food. And then that also kind of goes in line with the quality of food as well. So just to give you a few quotes of what people said. So regarding the access to cultural foods, so Bloomington seems to offer a few like Chinese cuisines, but then a lot of people that were from the Latinx community said that they didn't often get places where they can buy certain ingredients. So one person said, so there are like a couple of things I can go to, like a Mexican restaurant to get what I want, but I'm also part Puerto Rican and part Dominican, and there are no restaurants in Bloomington that serves food for that specific, like a specific ethnicity. So a lot of times it's a matter of, I want something like fried plantain, mashed plantain. And I have to just go out and make it myself, which I love, but sometimes the more work I want to put in when it's like I kind of just go down the street, sit down at places, and then on the other token, I can't find it at all. So this person again is expressing that for their specific, I guess Latino community is also pretty wide ranging. So they're saying, yeah, they can't find specific things. And then next person, I'd love to have Brazilian restaurant, but I know it's too specific in a small town. And Chinese restaurants seem to be popular, but in Chinese, like when we cook, there's different styles or cuisines, so people from different parts of China cook differently, like completely different flavors, spices, etc. And then Bloomington's not the best spot for Mexican food. So that's access to cultural foods. And then quality of food, Bloomington's campus. So don't really like it much, not that much nutritional value, and I can eat meals on campus that don't have enough protein. It's bland, everything's bland. It's really repetitive, and it was supposed to be local food, but it wasn't good. So this is campus, and that was the other big thing is like, and I think, with PCM, it's like, we want campus to partner with People's Cooperative Market. Like, you have a lot of resources to do that, but it's unfortunate that people don't know about it, and then also they're, telling us that we don't have access to healthy foods. And then dietary needs. For some folks as well, that was a big concern. Just not having a range of different options, but also the fact that it's unhealthy. So like one person, as a person of color, hypertension is certainly something that concerns me. I really like to be able to control what I consume, but and how it's prepared, but you can't control the amount of oil, butter, sugar, and then I love fresh herbs and all the kinds of vegetables. I can't eat a few because I have arthritis. And so I'm trying to avoid tomatoes and eggplant, things like that will aggravate it. That's also just, interesting because it's like, even with certain fresh foods, it's like someone's limited. So not having like a wide range of even the fresh types of foods also creates problems for people. And then affordability was a big one, I think, especially among college students, but also, of course, staff. Staff are also very underpaid, and faculty as well. And so one person said, I would like healthy foods. Like I know in other countries, healthy foods are a lot cheaper. Processed foods or foods like we enjoy as snacks are like expensive for them, and vice versa for us. it's bad processed foods that are like cancer causing that are really cheap for us, which is so interesting because I also have that experience of just like, why is healthy foods so expensive and the cheap stuff is very accessible? And then another person, meat, because the rest we can't get at Crimson Cupboard. The biggest difference is the meat, beef, and seafood. So yes, expensive food is also definitely a big concern. And it's like 3 hours of time. Okay. So just as an overall, the interview themes were that expensive foods create not only barriers to getting healthy foods, but also culturally relevant foods. And then cooking at home is time consuming, and then not having a lot of ingredient options, transportation issues, and the importance of fresh foods. So this pie chart is really nice because it kind of shows you where the majority of folks fell. And so the cooking at home was a big thing, and then next was access to cultural food. So those were big, came up a lot in the interviews. So respondents also answered if they knew about if they qualified for public assistance, food assistance. And so again, a lot of folks said that they didn't, but at the same time, people didn't know. And the people that said yes, I'm not too sure because I don't think we asked that in the interview, so I'm not sure, how they felt about, with having public assistance, how that, affected them, if it really helped. But from what I do know, I think over the years it seems like they've expanded where you can access certain foods with like the TANF or whatever, like the EBT card. So maybe that's changed where people can actually access a wide variety of foods, but that would be something I think just to know, like, is public assistance the food that you're getting? How much is it helping? And so, yes. So one of the questions that we ended up asking towards the end of the interview was, if we hosted a community meal, would that be something that you'd be interested in? And a lot of people were excited about that. And unfortunately, it's not something that we got to at this time, but it's something that we want to think about. And something that really pushed this project was to be able to do that. And so so to have this community kitchen would be a wonderful idea. Also, like a community pantry, which, a lot of people also didn't know that there were pantries on campus. So I think for this person, kind of indicating that we don't really have a sense of community in Bloomington. I think it would be much healthier and happier in doing our work together. Community garden is about family, second family. Take care of my garden. This is the community. This is the community I miss in Bloomington. When people talk about diversity garden, but here in the diversity, I see people meet each other, have communication. Sometimes people come in garden and ignore you and not talk to you. Dang. Yeah, that sucks. And then we wish cooking class. So I think a lot of folks were definitely expressing an interest in that. And it was actually something that, with talking to the cultural centers, like the Black Culture Center and then the Latino Culture Center, they have different things that they host as well. So they do something similar. But some people just didn't know about it either. And so this is something that PCM is hoping to partner with other cultural centers as well and have to continue to work together to find ways to make healthy food more accessible. So at the end, so we ended up writing this report. So this, again, like I mentioned, it was funded through this Ostrom workshop, Critical Food Lab. And so the sustainable, I can't remember all the acronyms, but sustainable food something. Yeah. So we ended up writing a report for them, and of course we wanted to include some recommendations based on the study. And so one of the key things was, the university has to absolutely just, like, especially when they're hosting events, even departments hosting different things. Try and get local foods. Don't go to wherever the community deli or whatever, some big Panera.
Panera is every department.
Right.
Potbelly.
Yeah, exactly. So like, come on, partner with people that are here and have, that want to share their resources as well. And so, and in the culture centers, I don't think, like in sociology, we definitely go to Panera, go to all the other ones. I don't think we've ever partnered with any of the community, any partners. And so community meals, again, was a popular, we asked a lot of folks and they expressed interest in doing that. And then another thing is, because people either didn't know that they were eligible or were not eligible, just sharing with more people that, SNAP, you are eligible, especially for undergrad students, you are eligible for SNAP state assistance. So that's something that, the university, but also key people within the university can step in and do that. And then raising, again, awareness to the various food resources on campus. And then through this study as well, I think, it really helped me as a student, do this work, do this research. So absolutely funding more researchers and community organizations. So those were key recommendations. And yes, thank you so much. I will answer questions.
You spent a bunch of hours on this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were there any things that surprised you?
Anything that surprised me? I think because we started off with saying, we're gonna interview BIPOC students, faculty, and staff. I think the faculty part surprised me because obviously me coming in, I'm like, oh, faculty make a lot of money, they're at a top university, or one of the top universities, they're making a lot of money. So I think that as we asked that question of let's include these various groups on campus, I started to think about that myself. And as we talked to various people and everything like that, I was like, wow, faculty and staff don't make money. It's very specific faculty that make a lot of money. So I think, yeah, so that surprised me a little bit. But then also, I think that was the big surpriser. I think everything else, because I'm also a grad student, the not having access to healthy foods, not getting paid enough, not trying to build a community, making a lot of effort to build a community, all those things were validating for me. And then also the transportation thing, I'm trying to think of other things that came up. Yeah, I would say that probably was the key thing.
Yeah. Does anybody else have questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Did anybody mention the feeling of social stigma that may come from using public assistance? Because growing up, we actually had the stamps and not the card and stuff. But even then, I've seen grocery workers when people have the card in the store, give people dirty looks. I grabbed the wrong thing and it just makes it a whole big thing. Is that something else that has been talked about in the community?
Yeah, I think I remember one person mentioned that they didn't want to, I'm trying to think for the full context, but basically they were I know that there are some resources on campus, but I don't want to hoard. I don't want to be the one to show up and not bring anything to the table, which was it's saddening because I'm of course we don't want it to be oh, we're trying to hoard resources, but also you do need it. So you're bringing something to the table in different ways. So I think that was one thing that someone mentioned was just I don't know relative to everyone else. Am I supposed to be so hungry that I don't even have food to be able to want help, or at what point? So I think that was something where it was like, no, like it sounds like you like that's real, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly,
You have to think about it.
exactly.
Sure.
So
Sure.
that definitely came up in that way. Yeah, that's a good question.
So community meals came up quite a bit. So, but a lot of people live off campus. So are they? Do you get any sort of a sense of where they would want community meals?
First United.
Yeah, like is it off campus? Because
People's
again,
Market.
people are
Right.
living out, or is it an on-campus sort of thing, or would it be even a mixture of those sort of things that we potentially welcome?
Yeah, I think it's a potentially a mixture. Like, I think people expressed the interest, and I think, you know, as we were talking, because towards the end of the interview we were like, you know, hey, we're thinking about doing this community meal, would you be interested in it? And so people expressed interest, and then we kind of told them, like, you know, Mother Hubbard's cupboard, you know, different places that we are potentially thinking about partnering with. And so we kind of gave them like a little bit of a hint of as to where the community meals would take place or how they would take place. But I think in general, probably a lot of students, you know, had known about the cultural centers and talked about some of the cultural centers that host various things where they have food involved. And so I think that was one of the big ones that came up, was the culture centers that already exist. But I don't know, I think a lot of people just didn't know about like the pantries or, you know, the various places outside of campus. But I'm trying to think of staff or faculty that might have mentioned something, but yeah. But I think a lot of people also didn't know about, you know, like the farmers market, for example, like as we were recruiting. So knowing about the First United, yeah, a lot of people kind of just knew what's in proximity, the culture centers, you know, the departments, stuff like that.
Yeah. So it'd be even more like, how do you make those connections and invitation and say, oh, I'll walk with you to that place because it's a different, scary, unknown space.
Right. That's true.
Was your study brought up to administration at all, or did they have any questions? If it has been, like how they can understand their impact on the lack of food for students.
Right. It was brought up to the SSFS.
They're closed now.
I know. So that's, I think, something that we, you know, have to do actively. Like, I think submitting that report was hopefully going to be part of that effort. But since they closed down.
Yes, would like to hear about this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they're here? Yes.
Yep.
Ooh, what a coincidence.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah. Definitely. So yeah, and this, I hope that this will be an ongoing thing for sure, because
Obviously a need
yeah,
for more
exactly.
research and more food access.
Mm-hmm.
Love you. Okay, great.
Thank you guys.
I'm not surprised at all that you're amazing. But I do want to say also that what was done with this research was historic, because often this research, especially at predominantly white institutions, are done by white people. And these, I do not believe that people would have answered the interview questions the way that they did if it was not done grad level, undergrad level, like everybody was there, right? There were people who were very vulnerable in these spaces. And so part of it is that we gave them a gift card. Part of it is that it was on Zoom or on campus. We really made ourselves available to them, right? And I think that, especially when it comes to faculty and staff, our feedback at People's Market is they come to us because no one else is usually here. So there's an embarrassment for faculty and staff that surprised me. Like I was like, oh yeah, you like People's Market? And they're like, we know we aren't gonna run into people who are gonna shame us in the same way that in other spaces.
Like
Crimson Cupboard, right? And so, yeah, it's so sad, right? It was really sad. And so I want to reiterate, like, part of the genius of this work is that we continued Naya's work, but also that we did it in a way that was so centered around community-based research.
Yeah, right.
And so that participatory part of it being really hearkening to what we want. We want people to be vulnerable about a subject that a lot of people don't want to talk about. A lot of people don't want to talk about being hungry. There's a lot of shame. And so what came out of that is that People's Market has continued to donate food to La Casa. We give eggs every week. We're getting them another produce share this year. And from what I understand, the eggs are there in the morning and they're gone by the afternoon. We're talking 20 dozen. So the need is getting higher. And I think especially when we consider cooking space, that's also that came out of here. There aren't kitchens on campus. So what surprised me is I didn't think anybody wanted to cook. These people want to cook.
Yeah.
That's not the issue. When we talk about healthy cooking, people want to do that.
And the kitchens that exist, you usually have to pay for. They're not on campus, but you can pay for spaces.
And even if they have a stove, do they have a pan and a pot and a fucking spoon so they can sit there and serve?
Say that,
No,
and not
this is-
plastic.
I'm sorry, I'm a cook and I'm big into food insecurity.
Yeah.
This is one of the things I've talked about. I don't want to take over.
No, you're good.
This is one of the things I've talked about a lot when I've talked to her specifically about when it comes to food insecurity and helping others. Yeah, you can give them a can of beans, but it doesn't matter if they can't cook it. If you eat raw bean, you're gonna get sick and die. You gotta cook it.
You gotta cook it. Yeah, and even locally, there was a huge building, single apartment building set, and there were no ovens, there were no pans. They're like, see, we helped, and I was like, did you? Did that help? I don't know. And so even our efforts to give local food are sort of buried by, well, I don't have a stove, I don't have the pans. We can't even get to the slices.
Oh, God.
Right? So, again, you're wonderful. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing.